Today's topic is 3 new connectors on the Scribe Online platform: Google Analytics, NetSuite, and Postgres. And a bit of introduction for myself. I'm Paul Varley, the Product Marketing Manager for Scribe. And there you've got my email address. So if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to email me. I've got that at the end of the presentation as well. And let's get into this presentation about these new connectors. So Scribe has licensed an entire library of connectivity from a partner called CData, and these are the first 3 connectors that we're launching from those drivers. So CData makes drivers that connect to various applications and make them look like a database, and we're taking those drivers and we're wrapping them up as Scribe Online connectors and making them available in our marketplace. So like I said, these are the first 3. They're probably products that you're familiar with, but in case you're not, Google Analytics is the most popular website analytics tool on the internet. It's used on lots and lots of websites, including our own website at Scribe. And so the connector is going to give you connectivity to that to be able to pull your website analytics data into Scribe Online. NetSuite, of course, is one of the leading cloud-based ERP and CRM solutions that belongs to Oracle Corporation. And you may know that Scribe has had a NetSuite connector for a while. So with this one, we now have 2 connectors. And so I'll just say a little bit about the differences there. Compared to the old NetSuite connector, this new one is a lot broader. So whereas the old one had about 12 different entities that it supported, this new one supports over 100. It gives you access to a lot more NetSuite objects, in other words. And so for most purposes, you probably want to use the new one unless there's some little feature that the old one has that you might need, then you could use the old one. They're both available, so you have your choice there. And then Postgres is an open source database that is the number 4 database according to a research company called iData Labs. And so now we've got connectivity to that, in addition to things like SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, and so forth. So with that introduction, I'm going to mostly be giving demonstrations today, because I think that's probably the best way to understand these connectors and how they work. So I'm going to switch to my Scribe Online organization here. And you can see that this is the dashboard. To access these connectors, you just go to the marketplace and select them and then click the install button. So if you have a Scribe Online subscription, you want to try these out, you can easily just add them in the marketplace and go ahead and give them a shot. On my dashboard, I can see the connections that I have, and I want to look through these a little bit before we go into the examples that I have for you today, just so you can see the kind of information that you would be using to connect to these applications. So the Google Analytics connector uses a certificate that you generate on the Google Analytics website. So there's some work that you have to do ahead of creating a connection. You've got to enable an API and generate a certificate. We've got all the instructions on how to do that in the help. But then once you've done that, you just install that certificate on your on-premise agent, and then you refer to it, you give the path of where the certificate is, you get a password, and then these are also things that you configure in the Google Analytics API settings. All right, so that's Google Analytics. For NetSuite, it's very similar to what you would normally expect for most of our connectors. You've got an account ID, a user ID, and a password. And then there's a field here for additional parameters that gives you some control over, for example, what tables you're looking at and so forth. You can look at the help to see all of the options that you have for setting up additional parameters there. But creating a basic connection for NetSuite is very easy, just the account ID, username, and password. And then lastly, Postgres. In this one, you have a server name, which because I'm using an on-premise agent, I'm just referring to that as a local host, but you could also have a domain name and server name and everything in there. Port number, database name, and then username and password. And again, you've got some additional parameters that you can use optionally for that. All right, so let's take a look at some of the examples that I've built for this demo. So in the first scenario, we're going to look at NetSuite, and we're going to do a scenario where we're getting customers out of NetSuite and we're putting them into our marketing system so that we can email people. And so I've got two connections on this solution. I've got Granite State Marketing and then I've got NetSuite. And just to set things up, you can see that when I open my view leads and marketing map, I can do a preview on the query of leads in the marketing system. And when that preview comes back, you see I have only one lead in there. That's what I get on the preview, just to prove that there's very little in that system in its initial state. Now let's look at this second map where we're going to be adding NetSuite customers into the marketing system. And on this one, I've got a query block from my NetSuite connection. And I should also point out that you can see all of the blocks that are available on a NetSuite connection. So all of the things that you would normally expect, like query, create, update, delete, lookup, and so forth. You can do a fetch as well. Interestingly, NetSuite also supports native query. As I said, CData is making an application look a lot like a database. So with a native query block, you can actually write a SQL statement that does things like joining tables together or doing more complex filtering. You can do all that through a SQL statement, which is kind of cool. But here I've just got a basic query block, and I am doing some filtering on the customer entity for NetSuite just to make sure that the data I'm getting back is useful. So I'm only going to get customers where I have a first name, last name, and email that are not null. And because if they're null, then that's not very helpful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those customers out of NetSuite and I'm going to insert them into my marketing system. And I'm actually doing an update insert block in this case, just in case that lead already exists in the marketing system. I was doing a lookup or a matching criteria on the ID field, which is coming back from NetSuite. So when I create a lead in the marketing system, I'm recording the internal ID from NetSuite, so then I can do a match when it comes back later. And then on my field mapping screen, I've just got just some basic information coming from NetSuite. I've got the customer's name, the email address, like I said, that internal ID from NetSuite in the ID field, phone number, title, that kind of thing coming back from NetSuite. And one more thing I wanted to show you before we try this map out is just the list of entities. As I said, the NetSuite connector supports more than 100 different entities. And you can see here, if we just scroll through, there's a lot of them, right? And in fact, you even get custom objects in here as well. So if we have any, I don't know if I do in this system, but if you have custom objects, those will show up in here as well. I think I saw one that looked like it might have been custom. All right, so in this case, we're just working with customers, which is kind of a straightforward one. All right, so that's our map that we're gonna run. So let's give it a moment to run here, and then we'll look in the marketing system again to see that it has done the query and inserted all those records into the marketing system. And it's a pretty small data set, so it shouldn't take too long to run. Okay, there it's completed. And now when we look in the marketing system again by doing the preview on the query block, we should see those records that came across from NetSuite. That first record will be the same one that we saw before, but then you see that the preview now has the full 25, which is the number that we bring back. And so records 2, 3, 4, and so forth all have data that came from the NetSuite query. All right, next let's look at Google Analytics and Postgres. So I've got another solution here called website traffic. And in this scenario, like I was saying, Google Analytics captures all kinds of information about the traffic on your website. And of course, you can do the analysis inside of Google Analytics if you like. They provide all kinds of reporting tools. but there may be cases where you want to extract that data from Google Analytics and store it somewhere. Let's say you want to use a different analytical tool to look at your data, or you want to take time slices and keep them historically. So in this scenario, we're just going to pull back information about where traffic is coming to our website, and then we're going to store that in a Postgres database. So like I did on the last solution, first I'm going to look into the database to see what's there. I've got a table called traffic that has just 3 columns, keeping track of the date, the site that the traffic's coming from, and the number of visits. And if I do a preview on that, you'll see that there's nothing in here right now because the table's empty. These are the 3 fields that I just mentioned. And then if we look at the second map, which is getting data from Google Analytics and putting it into that traffic table in the Postgres database, again, taking a quick look at the operation blocks that are available, the first thing you notice about Google Analytics is it's a source-only connector. You don't have the ability to put data into Google Analytics, but you can pull data out. And so you've got query, fetch, lookup, and again, native query, because the CData driver is making Google Analytics look like a database. You're able to write SQL statements for complex joins and filtering. On Postgres, this is a source and target connector. So you've got query, native query, which again makes sense because it is a database. You can write SQL statements, create, update, delete, lookup, fetch, and so forth. So in Google Analytics, if we look at the entity list, you've got, again, quite a few things, not as many as NetSuite, but at least about a dozen or so different objects that are available. I've chosen the traffic entity, which is the one that provides information on the websites that you visited. And if we do a preview on that, we'll see some of the data that's coming back in terms of the fields that are available. Things like the browser, the campaign, location information, date, like I said, language. This is not all of it is always filled out, but if it's available, it's going to come back from the query. And then for each record that comes back, or in other words, for each site that I'm getting information about, I'm going to go ahead and use a create block to put that into my Postgres database. And if I look at my field mapping, you can see that, again, I've just chosen 3 of the fields that were available in Google Analytics and mapped them to those 3 fields in the database: the date of the traffic, the site where the traffic's coming from, and the number of visits. So now I will run that map, and then we should see the data in the Postgres database after it's finished. This one also should only take a few seconds to run. All right, there it's finished. Ran at 100 records per second. And now when we look at the traffic statistics in Postgres, we do that same preview on the query block. We should see those records, or at least the first 25 that we get in the preview. See where you saw that table was empty before. Now it has a record for each of the sites that are directing traffic over to our website. So for example, here's a blog that was generating traffic for our website, a recent blog on how to save execution history to a database. All right, so that is the Google Analytics and the Postgres connectors. And so that is where I will end the demo, and we'll end up going back to the PowerPoint for just a moment. So you might want to know, first of all, where to get more information on these connectors and what they can do. And the best source of information for that is going to be our connectivity library, and I've included the URL for that there, and we'll actually just go ahead and visit it for a moment. If you go on our website and you go under products and Scribe Online connectivity, you'll find this library of all the connectors that are available. And if you click on each one, it'll give you a summary of what the connector does and how it works and so forth. But I also wanted to point out these links at the bottom. I've mentioned the help a couple of times. So there's a link here to the Scribe Online help, which explains things about how to create a connection and so forth. But the other thing that's neat that's on these pages, particularly for the CData based connectors, we also have a link to the help on the CData site. So if you want in-depth information about exactly which objects are supported and which fields are on those objects, you can follow that link and it's going to take you right into the CData help for that library. And then if you look under data model, you've got tables and views. And in that case, you can choose one and then it'll tell you all of the different columns that are supported in there. And so for example, we were looking at the traffic object, and here it's going to tell you how to work with all the different fields that are on there, what they mean, what the data type is, and so forth. So there's just a wealth of information on here about all of the capabilities of these connectors, and it's like I said, directly accessible from the connectivity library pages. And if you're not familiar with Scribe Online or you don't have an account yet, I will point out that we do offer a free trial. So if you're interested in trying any of these out, you can sign up for a free trial following this link here, which is also easily accessible from our website. And that will, and then you can get in and install the connector from the marketplace and then try some of these things out. If you have questions after, or you want some help with that, feel free to contact us. You can contact us at sales@scribesoft.com, or my email address is there as well. You can feel free to contact me in that. And so with that, I'll thank you for attending our webinar today. I hope you enjoyed the overview of these new connectors. We look forward to seeing you on the next Scribe webinar.